Hello and welcome back to another edition of this Facebook Live series. I call it Getting Your Adrenal Fix. Welcome back to another edition of Getting Your Adrenal Fix. Today we're going to be talking to you about adrenal fatigue and autoimmunities. A really controversial subject in my opinion, because autoimmunity is, I think fair to say, an epidemic. And I believe that even the statistics that are reported by the CDC are ceasing to continue to make metrics and figure out how much of this is going on, because it gets out of hand in terms of all of the different autoimmunities that are possible. And so it's fair to say it's an epidemic, and the sad part is that it's not being handled properly in the medical field. And further upon that, the sad part is the broken healthcare insurance model. Sometimes we forget that that's the actual additional sad thing that's going on in healthcare is that insurance is a broken model. It doesn't pay for things that it should pay for. It pays for very limited scope of practice, and unless you are sicker than the average sick person, or your doctor has the time to do a thorough blood review, and not a lot of that is out there nowadays, although a lot of it is, and you get a lot of great assessments. And so when you get assessed and you're not sicker than that average sick person, potentially you're told you're normal. Or there's no medical necessity to pay for any specialized tests. Or the doctor is too busy to spend too much time with you, or it doesn't matter anyways, because not only is the insurance-based model a broken model, it's a pharmaceutically driven model. And oh no, you can't even hear me? I hope can anyone else hear me? If you can't hear me, can you guys just tell me you can't hear me? Because I can see Frank said he can't hear me. I have it turned around properly today, Frank, but I did have it last week as well. But if anyone else can't hear me, if you can type it in the box there, so I know, and maybe I can start this again, because I certainly don't want to talk for a half an hour and say a lot of things that are really cool, and that all of a sudden I find out it wasn't recorded. So if anyone else can put in there that they can't hear me, hopefully you can hear me, Frank. I'm not sure if you can't or you can, but I'll just assume that you can and that everything's going well. So what we were talking about is that not only is the insurance-based model a broken model, it is okay, you can hear me, great. Thank you so much, Lynn. Not only is the insurance-based model a broken model. Sorry, Frank, you got me off track there. I know you're trying to help me get this all proper. You sent me an email. I had it done last week. Thanks, Glenda. I'm glad you can hear me. But now you're telling me my audio's off. So you're messing me up, man. Anyways, but I know you're doing it to try to make sure we can give you this message. So anyways, talking about the insurance-based model, it's also a pharmaceutically driven model, meaning a lot of the times anyways, we're just going to give you this medication or that medication to address the deficiency or try to optimize your youthful levels. And there's problems with that, because if you do it that way, it's a very reductionistic model, and you continue to get sick, and day after day goes by and you're exhausted, potentially your blood tests are normal, you're trying medications that are trying to raise your deficient levels, or you're doing bioidentical hormones to optimize your youthful levels, and it's just not getting it done. You're still tired, you're still exhausted, you still have brain fog, you still have achiness and pain in your joints, you still crash in the middle of the day, maybe you still have anxiety or depression or mood disorders, there's still a lack of libido, there's still a problem of trying to go to bed and just can't turn your mind off, or going to bed and falling up, a couple hours later, or not being able to fall asleep all night. And then it's like Groundhog Day, and the alarm goes off, and it's like the same day all over and over again, and there's nothing wrong with you. That's the problem, and I'm guessing you're seeing a lot of reoccurring themes in these videos because there is a lot of reoccurring themes. There's a lot of overlap. And so today we're talking about autoimmunities and as it relates to adrenal fatigue. But we're also talking about how autoimmunity is an epidemic and it's not getting managed properly because of an insurance-based model that's a sickness-based model that's broken and that doesn't look at the whole picture, and it's pharmaceutically driven. What's wrong with that picture? It's like 5 different things that's wrong with that. But the sad part in that as well is the doctors a lot of the times are handcuffed, so they can't do the things that they'd like to do. They get this steady flow, if you will, of patients coming to them because their insurance covers it and they're going to go see the doctors that are in insurance. But they're also limited, and the ones that are conscientious about their limited scope of practice are frustrated by the fact that they can't help their patient as much as they should, or they don't look at the research, or they don't continue their education, or they don't look into genetics, or they don't keep an open mind, or they don't have their heart in the right place. And so when they operate in an insurance-based model where they're very, very limited, and it's a reductionistic model, and it's a pharmaceutically driven model, they are not able to manage that case correctly. And then you have years and years and years of fatigue, exhaustion, another day of waking up, and you realize 10 years go by, and is this the way you want to live the rest of your life? Your insurance is dictating what you can do and what you can't do, and it should, and you know what, your insurance should cover all of these things. They should do that. The healthcare needs to be redefined, but ultimately the doctors that have handcuffs, they are in the comfort zone where, listen, I don't have a lot of time to go into it. I got a patient. I'm getting paid less today than I did 5-10 years ago. My overhead, everything else has gone up, and I just don't have the time to get into that. I don't know if you've ever felt that way. I'm imagining you have, and that's one of those reasons why. And so the other doctors that don't go in the insurance model, they take more of a risk. They don't have the insurance driven practice that people go and see them, and insurance pays them a sort of a steady flow, albeit less than they did 5-10 years ago, but a consistent steady flow. Also, it takes getting out of their comfort zone because now you have to somehow help convince people to take that leap of faith to get the life that they deserve, that they're afraid of, that they have forgotten about, that they think insurance has to dictate, that have been led down the wrong path and feel that potentially they are going down the wrong path again and they're going to lose their investment. I understand all of that, and I appreciate all of that, and it should be different. The insurance should cover that, and healthcare should be defined differently, but it's not. The sad reality is that it's not. And so doctors have to live outside the box of what insurance covers and doesn't cover. They have to understand a whole new way of practice. They have to spend a lot of time on all of the tangled web of yarn that's going on before they come and see you, with the stacks of paperwork and all the supplements and all the things that they're doing, and try to be their advocate and try to say, look, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. Why did you do this? And did anyone tell you about this? And what, have you considered that? And the information is there. It's all there. But when you don't think of it in a elaborate way that takes a lot of time, that insurance doesn't pay for, that you're looking at it more than a reductionist model, that takes time. And so I guess what I'm really trying to say is that when you're suffering it with a healthcare crisis, in terms of the insurance-based model and an epidemic like an autoimmunity, you have the combination of bad variables coming together where you don't get the care you need, you don't get the support you need, and you have to a lot of the time where you're already paying for an insurance, come out of pocket. to spend on certain tests, and that sucks. I really believe it does. So anyways, I just wanted to talk about that. I do think that that I wanted to apologize to my people that are on this fan page and watch me. There was a thread that kind of went through that someone insulted me because I believe I spend a lot of time, energy, and effort and a lot of heart into trying to help you. And there's an insurance-based model that that is broken, that handcuffs doctors, that don't allow them to practice and be the advocate for the patient. They have to take the risks of practicing this way, and also the benefits of being able to help patients and spend time, because it takes a lot of time. So I just wanted to apologize because I believe that I was insulted, and as a result, I didn't act the way I would have liked to 100%. Anyways, moving forward. So I wanted to talk to you about the adrenal fatigue and autoimmunity. So I wanted to give you an overview. Immune system is obviously something's going wrong with the immune system, and it's an autoimmunity. The immune system is supposed to detect the difference between self and non-self. And when it attacks the self, it can't determine the difference between non-self. And so that implies a lot of things. That implies there's a genetic predisposition for that. And typically someone that has an autoimmunity is going to have a genetic predisposition. So someone in the family was autoimmune, typically mom's side of the family. They may have had thyroid issues, celiac disease, type 1 diabetes, Parkinson's, maybe they had lupus, maybe they had a rheumatoid or scleroderma. There's so many of them that I don't even know about. I mean, there's pemphigus, so many different ones, lichen planus, even POTS. There's ones that I find about every day that I haven't even learned or I don't even know about because it's so new and obscure. But here's the good news about that, if there is anything, that the immune system is going haywire, but it's a lot of the same mechanics that cause the breakdown in mechanics in the first place. It's just a different target tissue. And that really needs to sit and resonate with you. Meaning, if you have some clues that you have a chief complaint and you do things that increase that chief complaint, even though it's not necessarily the gut, which we'll talk about, doesn't mean it can't be an autoimmunity. It just means that your engines are revved or they're primed, your pump is primed in another tissue. When your immune system goes haywire or increases its activation or goes through an immune stressor and becomes depleted, and you're not able to balance your glucocorticoids or your glucose, or you're not able to balance your systems, then ultimately it's going to cause an imbalance of your immune system to attack itself with the genetic predisposition to do that. So a lot going on there. We need to look at what kind of infections are they, because you can target your treatment against different infections, whether they're virus or viral or they're bacteria, candida, mold, yeast. There's some really gnarly, as I learned in California while I was going through school there's some really gnarly pathogens out there. And you know, nutrients and homeopaths, no matter how alternative you are, may not be strong enough, especially if it's early. If it's later and you've had that illness for a long time, then typically the research shows that those antibiotics or those stronger pharmaceutical approaches are not going to be supportive. So you need to do it at the right time in the right place. But ultimately, if you have a gnarly pathogen, it's gonna smolder. And so that's another concept in terms of inflammation. A lot of patients have told me, oh, I did the Boston Heart and everything was normal. My doctor said there was no signs of inflammation whatsoever. There's hundreds of inflammatory markers that your doctor is not doing just because it's not really taught, or it's not the conventional shortcut way to isolate what's going on. And so when you have a lot of different markers that can indicate inflammation, and you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater with, you know, your basic inflammatory marker saying there's no inflammation, you're wrong. Inflammation is smoldering. So it's not, number one, it's the wrong source to determine just based on the conventional labs that there's inflammation in the first place. Number two, it's low-grade inflammation. And so it smolders. It's just kind of like an ember that just never goes out. And as soon as it catches a gust of wind, it is ablaze. And that's an autoimmunity. But with the caveat that the immune system reacts against itself. And when it reacts against itself, it's a whole different ballgame. You have to quiet that immune system, and there's a lot of great things that you can do with that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, the GI system needs to be talked about if we're talking about the immune system. Most of you get that one already, so cleaning up the gut, repairing the lining, helping with digestive support with whether it's hydrochloric acid, or it's a digestive enzyme, or it's even lipases. Those are big ones. Ox bile. You know, if you don't have a gallbladder and no one ever told you needed to be on bile salts, I honestly do believe that does have some not following your Hippocratic oath when you don't tell someone that they need to be on bile salts, or they need to do something that's going to support their absorption of fat and their removal of lymph and circulation of toxins. That's really important. More importantly, that also needs to be told that there's a methylation issue if you have a gallbladder issue. But there's a methylation issue if you have an autoimmunity, because you haven't turned off the expression of the autoimmunity because you're not methylating properly, which causes gallbladder issues, which causes absorption issues, which causes a lot of issues. And so now we're starting to put some of the pieces together, but you also make sure that you have to re-inoculate the healthy flora. Sometimes we don't have good prebiotic health converting into probiotic health. That's a genetic SNP that we look at. It's called FUT2. A lot of people are polymorphic in that, meaning there's plus minuses and plus pluses. And when you understand that, you can look into their microbiome and see what are they doing in terms of strategies to mature that, and try to get some of those gnarly ones out of there, depending on how long they've been around. Also, food sensitivity is a big one too. I do believe that this is a controversial subject, but there's a lot of research that shows there's cross-reactivity between, it's the transglutaminases. Those are gluten antibodies, and different tissues in the body, whether it's your skin, your brain tissue, your nervous tissue, and your gut tissue. And there's tests that do that all the time that I do every single day. And then also, of course, the adrenals. That's what we're here about. What is the relationship? When we have an immune smoldering fire, we have the constant stimulation about the constant stimulation to the sympathetic system, and we're going to talk about exocyticity in a second, and neuroinflammation. That's a really important theme. But either way, the adrenals signal the body that it's under stress, or stress is impacting the adrenals. That's the thermostat that's telling the rest of the body that there's wear and tear on it. And we're just sort of looking at the thermostat when we look at the adrenals. But it messes up HPA Axis, so it messes up the signaling, the circadian rhythm being supported throughout the entire day, not crashing, not feeling tired and wired. Also, how your systems function at different times of the day. Liver's better at night. So if our circadian rhythms are off, it could impact the liver. The other thing I want to say is that when I give you one of these things, and I'm giving you a Facebook Live session, and I'm giving you 7 or 10 different ways to think about it, realize there's probably 15, 20. There's also Eastern medicine. There's the theories of the meridians and different points that are responsible for different organs and systems. And I really think you should have combined all that stuff to get the best outcome. But anyways, and then lastly, genetics. So we talked about genetics. If you're autoimmune, I already know you're not methylating. We're going to talk about that in a couple moments. I want to see where your weak links are on that methylation cycle. So let's talk about the immune system real quick. What causes a smolder? You know, a lot of the times it's just the overwhelming exposures to combinations of environmental toxins. So, you know, we have all the chemicals and all the toxins in that regards. And then we have all of the pathogens. And ultimately, the chemicals are disruptors. They're immune disruptors. So if you want to ask the question, how do chemicals cause an autoimmunity? It still stimulates an immune response, indirectly and not directly, and directly, sorry, in terms of it still stimulates the immune system because it's under stress. I'll give you an example. If we have EMFs, and we do have EMFs every day, what do you think happens with the trace elements and the heavy metal elements that we have in our body? What do you think happens to those? If anything, they can optimize or potentiate or vibrate or do something because it's a field. And if you think I'm weird, try and take a magnet and put it near something that's magnetized and see what happens to it. Is it weird to think it would move in through the air to your magnet? It's not. So what happens is ultimately EMFs can disrupt different pathogens or different metals that are stored in the body, and that stimulates an immune response. Indirectly, these disruptors, which we talked about last time, can cause a whole slew of problems, can cause endocrine disruptions, so increase of hormones and estrogens, and decrease, slowing of enzymes that break things down, speeding of enzymes that break things down. I mean, it's just endless what these things do, and that's going to stimulate an immune response. But more than likely, when I do an adrenal stress test on someone, there's something, especially with the people I meet, because people are not coming to see me because they're feeling healthy. They're seeing me because the mentality is, and it's just the way it is I'm sick, I need to fix myself, and I'm afraid that this is bad, and I realize that the pain of doing nothing is worse than the pain of confronting it and getting better. Because I find this, I'm going to go on a little tangent here. I find that patients that I work with, a lot of them are suffering, and they don't have crystal clarity on where they were and where they want to go and where they are now. And it's really important to figure that out, not just in a sort of understanding way, but in an objective way too. Because if you can't quantify your energy levels, if you can't quantify what systems in your body are run down, if you can't quantify a priority system in terms of what you need to do to fix things, and you can't quantify how you're improving, how do you know if you're getting closer? And so that's something that creates a lot of chronic problems. And that's one of the things I troubleshoot a lot with, is getting that clarity on what is it that would show you that you're improved and that you would know you were there, and how would your life be different, and what would you be doing, and what would be transformational about all those things, because certainly we forget those things. And certainly we don't want to dwell on the past. But if you don't know what it is that you want to baseline your improvements on, like succinctly, it's going to be difficult to get there for a lot of reasons. The reasons of the actual just not having that sort of that mental visual image of what you want, but from a weirdo woo-woo way, in terms of that's a vibration and a frequency that you're trying to align to. And your vibration and your frequency dictate your cell function, which dictate your tissue function, which dictate your organ function, and dictate your system function. And that's really a weird thing to say, but I would love for you to really get that and apply that, because that's what it's going to take to get better. And you need to define what it would look like and you need to understand what it would look like, and you need to quantify your level now, and implement something, and then see if it's improved or not improved. If it's improved, do more of that. If it hasn't improved, do less of that. But we need these baseline readings that we can do that are objective, but also things that you can do daily that doesn't require always having to go for tests. So that's really, really important as well. So I want you, because I do think a lot of people improve. I'm just going to grab a drink. I do think a lot of people improve, but they don't understand it. In terms of, well, yeah, I guess I'm sleeping better. Yeah, I guess I'm not a nervous wreck, but I still have this, that, and the other. But you're sleeping better, and that was a big problem. And we need to also think outside the box and not be so reductionistic, and do the things that are required to get better, because you can't stand living another day like this. So you have to get your eye on the prize, if you will. Recalibrate what it is that you're setting yourself to do, and I guess reverse engineer that. So, and then appreciate that there has been improvement. And I don't think that you're wallowing in the mire. I just think that you need that reminder that you got to look at where you were, where you want to go, that you're not super crystal clear on, where you are now, and then how badly do you want to get there. And I think I've heard it best in terms of dabbling is not going to do it. And I love that saying. It's just not. And so anyways, looking at exocyticity, we're going to talk about that on the board. I talked a little bit about last week, but when we have these pathogens and immune reactivities, that exocyticity basically causes neurotransmitters that are excitatory to continue to be in the on button, and that creates depletions and sympathetic overdrive, and it creates it creates a lot of exocyticity, which basically means you can't calm down. It's sympathetically driven, and that's ultimately going to lead to something called cell danger. And cell danger is something we want to talk about. It also, when you combine that with neuroinflammation, that's when we start to have these permanent on buttons. And when these permanent on buttons like exocyticity is on, guess what's permanently on? The immune system. And when the immune system is permanently on, and you have the predispositions and enough stress to overwhelm the system, and then you're not methylating and turning off the expression of these inborn inheritance, then you have the expression of an autoimmunity. So exocyticity needs to be taken care of as well as neuroinflammation, and that comes with understanding what are these causes. And if we're talking about autoimmunities, I'd want to look and investigate that. So anyways, now we're talking about the GI system. Probably you guys know that really well. Repair, breakdown, digestive enzymes. A lot of people don't look into. I saw a comment there, Paula. If I read that, then I'm going to get off track. But yes, that happens a lot with the gallbladder. That can be really life-saving in terms of, sorry, my back's a little sore. That could be really life-saving in terms of some bile support and some lipases. And so then also trying to help re-inoculate the healthy flora. The adrenal axis breaks down, trying to understand feedback loops, and then liver, gut, and then also how you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Those are all the things that you need to consider. The really big one that I wanted to talk about today is genetics, because I think that really needs to be addressed. I think in the broken healthcare model, doctors make some fatal errors that ultimately reduce your energy capacities, and one of them is not understanding genetics. And so in the history of healthcare, in the history of illness, the history of being healthy, two main things are dictating your health. It's basically your genetics and your environment. And so what are your susceptibilities, and what are your what are you exposed to? And environment's not just what are you exposed to, what are you getting that you shouldn't be, and what are you not getting that you should be? As easy as that. And if there's a lot of things that can impact what you're getting or what you should be getting, gut health is one, poor diet, infections, autoimmunities, predispositions, and then there's things that can impact what you're getting is too much, which is toxins and the ubiquitous nature of all of the things we get exposed to. So that's going to stimulate the genetics to have to be understood. And guess what? A lot of the broken insurance-based models don't pay for that. And it's one of those things where it's really cumbersome in terms of the time, energy, and understanding to be able to apply it. And that's why doctors that don't keep up with the latest information are 17 years behind on the research. That's what the studies show, because it takes that long to actually adapt it to your practice. And so anyways, I wanted to go over the genetics and how it relates. So basically what I'm saying here is, sorry, I have to just sort of adjust this. All right, so guess what I'm saying here, and again, this is less than perfect. I'm hoping to one day get this a little bit better, is that there's a genetic predisposition if you've expressed an autoimmunity. And so a lot of you know about the MTHFR. What I wanted to talk about was cell danger. So cell danger. Cell danger. I hope some of you know about that. How do you like that, Frank? It's the way that you should be looking at it. It's the right way. And I'm hoping the volume is good too. So anyways, cell danger is one of those things that ultimately cause these methylation pathways to be expressed in the first place. And so if you're not methylating optimally because of genetic predispositions, and you are under a lot of stress, that's what's going to cause these methylation pathways to express themselves. And cell danger is what happens when all of that stress impacts the mitochondria to the point where it shifts the way it produces energy. So this is the methylation profile. And this is talking about methylation, which is responsible for over 250 cellular activities in the body, and of which, fighting off immune pathogens, detoxifying, being able to put out the ember to the smoldering fire. We need to be doing this optimally. And so that takes place inside the cell. That takes place inside the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is in charge of deciding where the energy that's being produced goes to, and if it needs to shut down its engine so that it doesn't produce, it doesn't get its energy depleted, or it doesn't get stolen away from its ability to divulge it and sort of make it equal to everyone. It can go into a cell danger response. And what happens when that happens is now it prioritizes other things, like let's make free radicals, let's fight off infection, let's worry about exocyticity, let's try to worry about neurodegeneration and inflammation, and let's try to deal with these things. And that's the results that we get. We get the expression of these autoimmunities. But what I want to talk to you about is three major places where I see infections impacting your methylation, and your methylation impacting these infections and not being able to turn them off. And we only learn about MTHFR typically, and MTHFR is one of them. MTHFR, if we have a cell danger response, what that does is that slows down the MTHFR gene. So if you are homozygous or heterozygous and you have cell danger, your mitochondria has shifted the way it produces energy. It's shut down the thyroid. It's slowing down the adrenals. It's creating all of these immune system reactions and inflammatory cytokines to make communication happen. And it's not being able to turn off. And now it can't tell the difference between self and not self. And now we are attacking our own tissue. MTHFR is slowing down because your body says, whoa, put the brakes on. We don't need energy at this time. We're trying to conserve energy. We're fighting the fight. So anyways, that's one of them. Another point is right where the homocysteine turns into methionine. And that's where B12 and folate come together. And so you can have a B12 problem, a methylfolate problem, but if you have an MTR or an MTR gene, that's not going to work properly. On top of that, if you have TNF alpha, what's TNF alpha? TNF alpha is an inflammatory cytokine. So that's going to shut that down as well, and it's not going to produce energy. Another key spot, and I see this all the time, and I would really, really urge you, this is like in the, I don't know what minute we're on here, but in this meeting, at this minute, I would definitely recommend that you star this, because if you have an MAT enzyme, MAT, and it's either plus, which I see, I did 4 consults on genetics today, and 3 of them had plus, and you have an infection, you have cytokines, you have leaky gut, it's going to be a car accident in the middle of a 2-lane highway. So now we have a blockage at point 1, a blockage at point 2, a blockage at point 3. How well do you think we're making SAMe? And how well do you think we're able to use that SAMe to help fight off, help detoxify, or help regenerate DNA and repair your lining and your tissues, or even at least make some neurotransmitters and clear that pathway out, or help break down hormones? It's not doing that at all. And now you wonder why you expressed an autoimmunity that you had in your family predisposition, because you shut down your methylation pathways. So if you are an autoimmune patient and no one's looked at your genetics, that's a big hole, gaping hole that's missing as part of your workup. So anyways, I hope I gave you some good information today. We're talking about adrenal fatigue and stress. And again, once again, where does adrenals come in on here? Adrenals are the signaling system when we're under stress. And this whole system is pumping on all cylinders when we're under stress. So that's how the adrenals are involved, because if you're speeding up your methylation pathways, you're under stress. If you're in cell danger, you're under stress. It impacts your adrenals and it causes this whole cascade. So hopefully you found that really informative. I'll continue to provide you with information. I'm hoping I do a lot of questions in terms of having a vote. So I think next week what I'm going to do is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I will make sure I give you notice on that and how to sign up for that, and we'll go from there. If there's any other questions, let me just see. I'll scroll back to see what was answered, what was asked before, and we can see what I can do. Can't hear you, Doc. That's what got me all stressed out in the beginning, Frank. Then a couple people told me they can hear me. Paula, you said they told me nothing when I had my gallbladder removed. I learned to take digestive enzymes and bile salts from my own research. Good. I wonder if that helped. I would imagine it did. But I would tell you that, once they took your gallbladder out, your light bulb should have gone on and off and said, oh, I got some methylation issues. And those are probably still there, even though they took my gallbladder out and I'm on bile salts, and I still may be dealing with some chief complaints of fatigue and all the things that I deal with. Something's missing, for sure. But I'm glad. I'd be interested to know if that bile salts did help. I would imagine it did. Who else here? Gallbladder out at 17. Wow, that's a shame, Kimberly. I hate to hear stuff like that. First, I'm hearing about supplements for that. Well, hopefully that will add some support for you and give you some value. This is amazing. I'm a cosmetology instructor and started supplements 2 years ago. It makes total sense. I'm chemical sensitive, had pituitary tumor, no gallbladder. I take I think prebiotics. Yeah, good. I'm glad it's helpful for you. Lots going on there for sure, and it does make sense. Thank you very much for letting me know that. Lori, yes, your vibration has a lot to do with your health. I'm of total agreement. I'm learning to accept the constant course correction. Kimberly, that's good. You just celebrate the journey and don't just worry about accepting it. Gratitude is great, and acceptance and gratitude, I think, might be a little different. But as long as when you're accepting it, you're grateful in whatever way you can be, and then celebrating the fact that you accepted that and you're moving forward. So we forget to do that. And that talks a lot too about when I was saying, what is it that we're really looking for to improve? Oh my gosh, this is so good. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Lori. Thank you, Joel. Very helpful. Thank you very much, Kimberly. I accept your thanks. Sharon, thank you for this great info. You're welcome. I'm hoping it's helpful for you. Frank, you're bad. That's okay, Frank. I hope you're well. You're just looking out for me, and it's, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I can't hear. It's stuck. I don't know. Now you're confusing me. All right, Paula, you're brilliant. I think I need to learn my genetic dispositions. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Paula. If someone is still suffering with not feeling their greatest, and someone still is not functioning as well as they should, I don't know what it takes at what point that they decide, and that's just not just you, Paula. I don't know at what point they decide that, okay, this sucks and I need to change it. And I guess we sometimes, like I mentioned, prevention doesn't sell. So typically, I think it was Anthony Robbins that said, once we get bothered enough by the not doing something, and it's more painful the not doing something than doing something. And he used the example of taxes on April 15th. Ultimately, the pain of not getting that done, it outweighs the pain of the penalties and getting it done, or the vice versa. The pain of getting it done is more, and you put it off. But most people do something once the pain of getting something done sorry, it just keeps flipping on me. The pain of getting something done is more painful than not. And so I don't know does it take. Maybe fear of not thinking it's going to be helpful or it's going to work. Fear of really feeling that you're worthy of it. A fear of the resources that it takes to make it happen. But it comes down to there's no option. I think it has to be like, it's not only just fear of not getting it done, it's like there's no option but not to get it done. And I'll tell a quick story, and then I'll sign off. But when I was going through, when I grew up, I don't know if I told you this story, but when I grew up in Toronto, and I wanted to go through chiropractic college, I applied to the States, and it was really difficult for me to get a visa, student visa. And so what happened was we ended up putting the house, the mortgage up, and we didn't have to spend that money. We just had to show the U.S. government that we had this money that we were investing in school so that I can obtain my visa. And the way it worked out was because I had a college in my state, I guess you would say, in Canada, they didn't give me the full loans. And so I went and got accepted in California, and I knew I had half the money available for me for the year, but I had to come up with the other half. And that was really stressful. Imagine like moving to a different country, having to actually learn the stuff, the material, and figure out how the heck am I going to pay for all this. I got to get loans because at any time I may not get loans and I might get kicked out. And you probably have had a reoccurring dream like that, where you have that dream where you don't have enough during school or whatever it is, and that was what I was actually living. And one of my buddies said to me, I'll never forget, he says, "What are you doing? Like, you're crazy. Like, how are you going there? How are you doing that? Like, how are you, like, what happens if you don't get the funding?" And I was like, I never even thought that was a possibility. And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, I was like, "Well, I don't have an option. I mean, this is what I'm doing. This is what my career is. This will happen." I didn't even consider it not happening. Didn't mean it wasn't stressful. Didn't mean that I had anxiety and butterflies and couldn't sleep. and was what was responsible for getting me that adrenal crash in the first place. But it also meant that there was no option for me to not do it. And I went into my fear. And I came out the other side stronger and better, and now I can help a lot of people because it was transformational. And so does your fear of getting better get to the point where, or not getting better, get to the point where you don't have a choice, that you never even consider the option? Sometimes we have so much inflammation, we forget about that. And our frontal lobe is not able to work as well and focus on those things. So that's another strategy, is to develop that frontal lobe so that you can get those things sort of on autopilot and crystal clear. And that has to do with that vibration and frequency again. So anyways, Frank, a goal without a plan is a wish. Herm Edwards, I really like, that's a good one. Herm Edwards was the New York Jets coach, right? I'm not a Jets fan, Frank, but it's a good quote though. Paula, I think you said that. So anyways, I think that's it. Hopefully you guys had some insight. If you have any questions right now, let me know. I appreciate every one of you guys, and I try to make myself available as much as I can, and I'm here to educate you and support you and help you in your adrenal fatigue nightmare. And I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Take care.